I was once walking in Brooklyn in Crown Heights, and I met a man. He already passed away. His name was Rabbi Binyamin Klein. Rabbi Binyamin Klein was one of the secretaries of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So I said, Rabbi Binyamin, Shalom Aleichem, Aleichem Shalom. I told him, share with me a story. So he shared with me something, and he said that there was a couple that was living in Eretz Yisrael, and they were married for 10 years. And they really loved each other. It was a very nice couple. And he was a yeshiva man, he was a benter, he was a serious learner, a Talmud Chacham, but after 10 years, there were no children. So he decided to get divorced, so he should be able to do the mitzvah of pruruvu. It was done with a lot of heartbreak. He consulted some people, they got divorced. A few weeks later, she sees she's pregnant. That was not expected. 10 years they've been trying and nothing worked. Gewaldige simcha, she's pregnant. No problem, he's a Cohen. So you can imagine the heartbreak. After 10 years, they got divorced, not because they wanted to get divorced. They liked each other. So he went to authorities that he respected in his city to consult. Everybody lifted up their hands in despair. They're like, what are we supposed to do? There's nothing to do. He went to somebody, and that person suggested, for such a thing, you should go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He came from a community where there was a lot of opposition to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So his friend says, listen, what do you have to lose here? This is a mess. This is a horrible situation. The worst thing is he won't be able to help you. Nobody else is helping you. But if there's somebody who can help you, it's probably him you should go. No, I can't. No. His wife, his ex-wife, started to pressure and said, what do you have to mix in other things? Try. So begrudgingly, he went to New York. The Lubavitcher would give dollars on Sunday. He would give $1 for tzedakah, and if somebody asked, he would answer a bracha. So this guy went online with a friend who went with him. He tells the Rebbe the story. So the Rebbe gives him $1, and fast he says, "Dos reden mit der Mama." Talk to your mother. Bracha v'atzlacha. He goes out, he says, "Shekayach. I told you this was worthless and meaningless. I should talk to my mother. What, my mother's going to make a Yeshua here? My mother's going to, like Einstein, go back in time retroactively so we didn't give a divorce?" So the guy says, what do you have to lose? The Rebbe said, talk to your mother, talk to your mother. He says, you don't understand. My mother's an old woman, not completely here. She's very sensitive, she's frail, she's weak. I didn't tell her the whole story. Why should I break her heart and aggravate her? So he says, the Rebbe told you to speak to your mother. Go speak to your mother. So he, again, begrudgingly, he went to speak to his mother. He had to catch her in a moment of, that she was more present, because she was already older and she was struggling with her brain at times. But he found her and he shares with her this devastating story. She looks at him and she says, the Rebbe told that to you when you came to him and told him what happened? He said, yeah. So she said, I guess if the Rebbe knows, I can reveal it. And she looks at her son and she says, there's a story I made an oath that I'm never going to say. We adopted you from before birth. We wanted to give you a beautiful childhood. So we made an oath to each other that nobody is ever going to tell you the story, but you're not a Cohen. Rabbi Klein tells me, I went to visit the oil of the Lubavitcher Rebbe in Queens. And he says, I'm there, and I see a younger man with a child there. So when we went out, I said, Shalom Aleichem. Where are you from? Bnei Brak. What brings you here? So he says, this is the boy that was born after we remarried. So I came to say thank you to the Rebbe. Now I have my wife, I have my child. They had a second child afterwards. Sometimes a person has eyes and sees much, much deeper, sees what other people don't see. The eyes of a tzaddik. In our own life, it means that sometimes we're watching something and the situation is dismal. What are we supposed to do? Like, there's no way this can be solved. But the truth is that sometimes there's a whole different perspective. The Pasuk says in Vayera that Hagar was sitting with Yishmael and there was no water. And it says Hashem opened her eyes and she saw a well. When he opened her eyes and he saw a well, she created a well. So the Medrash says everyone is blind till God opens their eyes. What the Medrash is saying is the well could be right here, but I could be blind. And blind doesn't necessarily mean physically. So I could be in a situation where my entire life I judge and I see from a certain perspective and I'm right. and I investigate and I go to people and everybody says the same thing. But then there's a whole different perspective that comes from a completely different world. Like the Rebbe says, go talk to your mother. The last person I want to talk to, aggravate my mother, that this is what's happening with her son who can't have children and got divorced and finally can't remarry. Like the last person you want to talk to, especially when she's so old. And that was the beginning of salvation.